This is Boom Boom Brandon Oliver, and you're watching the Countdown City WrestleCast.
What's up, heels and baby faces? Welcome to a special bonus episode of the Countdown City WrestleCast. I'm your host, JC, and I'm joined today by Mr. Brandon Oliver,
Yes, sir.
the owner and promoter of River City Wrestling.
Not just that, but Boom Boom Brandon.
Boom Boom Brandon Oliver. We'll get into how that nickname came about. So, just remind everyone to follow our Twitter account at @CCG_WrestleCast and subscribe to the Countdown City Geeks YouTube channel for more WrestleCast episodes. So today, we're going to get a little retrospective on your career in wrestling. And just you get to do basically what everyone in wrestling loves to do, and that's talk about yourself.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
That's why we got into it.
So we got so you can just talk about yourself. Exactly. So we'll kind of jump right into it. Most people get into wrestling. They, at least nowadays when you talk to them, they kind of grew up on it. I'm wondering if that was the same for you, if you kind of grew up with wrestling.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I mean, growing up in the 80s, you know, I was a kid in the 80s, and I was an only child, had a single mother, latchkey kid, right?
Yeah.
And this is when latchkey kids and single parents and things of that nature were kind of like looked at as an okay thing. You know, and the decades prior it was kind of like a shh type thing.
Yeah, don't
right?
talk about it. Yeah.
Right. But it became more accepted, you know, in the media and in entertainment. You know, Murphy Brown and stuff like that was doing the single parent. So yeah, I mean, the family was small and intimate. It was just my mom and I growing up, and you know, didn't really have a father figure or anything per se. But just like any of the kids growing up in the 80s, man, I played with Star Wars and G.I. Joe and Transformers and He-Man.
All the fun stuff.
The cool stuff, you know, like if you watch that Netflix show, right? Toys That Made Us.
Yes.
So I played with all that, but I'll never forget, it was the second grade. The kids in my class were talking about wrestling, you know, and they were talking about the Iron Sheik, and you know, there was this bad guy beating up on a good guy, and the good guy came back and won, and all that stuff. So I was like, well, that sounds pretty cool, man. I'll check it out. And so they were like, yeah, you know, it's on TV and whatever. And the second I watched it, I was hooked.
Yeah.
And the first like vivid memory of wrestling, like the one angle that I just recall with, you know, so much clarity, would be the Jake the Snake Roberts and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat, the DDT on the floor. Yeah. That to me was what, you know, I'd watched wrestling before that, but that to me was really the story that got me hooked.
Yeah.
So after that, man, yeah, absolutely. I was obsessed with it. You know, I dragged my poor mom to wrestling shows all over the country. We went to WrestleMania 9 in Vegas, and 12 in 12 was in Anaheim, 13 in Chicago. We went to both of those.
Man.
So I was, you know, dragging her to all these things, and you know, I did all the fan things too, man. You know, I had my wrestlers and I had my own promotion, and you know, I'd have them wrestle it out, and you know, back then, you know, America Online and the dial-up days, there was e-fetting.
Oh yeah, I remember those. I think I was in a couple.
So, you know, naturally I ran an e-fed.
Yeah.
You know, and then you know, I'd write out cards and you know, you literally write out move for move, right? And
yeah.
So I, you know, did that, and you know, I promoted, you know, boxing matches between my friends, and you know, just all sorts of things in the 90s, and you know, that was really, like I said, the mid 80s to, you know, well, even now, but all the way up until I started training in 2000, I was obsessed with it. I mean, I have boxes and boxes of VHS tapes and everything, you know, and so I knew right away. I was like, okay, this is either a very serious addiction or
excuse me,
or this is, you know, a calling. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was obsessed with it, and then, you know, of course, when the internet kind of opened things up, you know, and you learn a little bit more about it, and so yeah, absolutely. I grew up, you know, worshiping wrestling.
Yeah, you said you mentioned it, that you started training in 2000. Was your goal always, like, did you want to be a wrestler, I assume? Is that kind of how you started it, or you just wanted to learn how to?
Actually, no. My goal from the very beginning was to be a promoter. That's just,
wow. You never hear that, people. You really don't.
That's what I was talking about with, like, you know, all the stuff I was doing as a kid. it was always me, creating it and trying to get people interested in my creation. We were talking a little bit before we started that I do career days at school, and one of the things I tell them is like, and I know this is a stretch to believe, but I was a nerd back in school, so I would, get notebooks and I would just write out stories, not necessarily wrestling. Some of them were, but just movies and other stories. And I would write out and develop the characters. And I just really found that fascinating. So, so in 1999, I was actually living in Florida at the time. And anyone that has a name in 80s, 90s wrestling lived in Tampa, Florida.
Right.
I mean, how many people I talked to, and that's where I started to find out about how to get into it. So I finished junior college, and as it just so happens, Shawn Michaels opened the Wrestling Academy here in San Antonio, and so I was like, okay, well, I'll go to college at SWT, now Texas State. Yeah. Why? Because Shawn Michaels went there. that
for all of like a semester or something like that. Yeah.
That, and when I took my orientation at SWT. When you drive down Ocarina Springs Drive, you come across Sewell Park. Yeah. And it was during the summer. And so I'm crossing Sewell Park, and I look over, and there's like 200 beautiful girls, right? And I was like, well, my odds would be pretty good that at least one of them will like me, right? So I was like, this is the school for me. I was taking a full load. I think it was like 19, 20 credit hours, something like that, while going to training at Shawn Michaels Wrestling Academy. So I was having to drive from St. Marcus downtown to San Antonio and doing all these classes and stuff. And then I would lie to get out of my Wednesday class. I was like, yeah, I got an internship. College professors love that. Yeah. You throw that I word in there, internship. I was like, yeah, I got an internship, Wednesday mornings. And, I'll just come to your Wednesday night class and, make everything up. And, okay, yeah, man, anything for an internship. Yeah. So that's how I got started, man. I mean, I started off training at the Shawn Michaels Academy. And I also want to point out, too, when I moved from Florida to here, I still own it, too. I drove a little tiny little Jeep Wrangler, a little two-door, mid-90s Jeep Wrangler, which is like, tiny. It's a little matchbox. And so I packed up everything that I had, which isn't a lot to put in there, and drove out here. So that was my start, or at least my my mission.
Yeah, it always seems to involve a car in a road trip with wrestling, right?
Well, it is, and I think that's the big part of it is truth, and a big part of it is romanticism. Yeah, because you hear about the road stories, and I mean, even WWE has a network special, like Road Trip or Road Stories or whatever. And so I think it is true that you do a lot of traveling or a lot of driving or what have you, but also it's romanticized. That is a part of it. That's that lifestyle. So
you said you got into some training. Do you just learning really to take bumps, or did you want to at least like kind of?
I wanted to learn everything. Yeah. And I went in there. So he had like a wrestling program and then like a manager / ref program. And I told him, I was like, I wanted to be a promoter. That's my goal. Goal. And I was like, I'll try the manager ref thing. And I don't know what the difference was other than like at the very, very end, because man, I got my butt kicked. And
still had to pay your dues.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not going to lie. I'm tall, but I'm not the most athletically gifted in the world. So, it was hard. It was hard, like in my class, you might know these names. Just, following for a while, but like Ikaika was in my class.
Oh, yeah.
The UK Kids, Simply Luscious. So they were all in that class. And so they, Ikaika has a great athletic background and stuff like that. So, it was a little bit of a struggle to keep up. But I am proud to say that I was the first one out of the class to be in a show. So,
hey, that works.
And so out of that, I started reffing and managing and stuff like that. But I knew how, take a bump. I knew how to put a match together, all that stuff. And I wanted to learn that too. I also told Shawn this too. I didn't want to just, I don't want to pick on anybody contemporary. Yeah. I didn't want to just buy my way into wrestling and be a promoter. I wanted to know everything about it. And I wanted to, do it that way and kind of pay my dues, Yeah. instead of like, I'm Mr. Promoter. Hey, everybody, come
I
look
just
at my
write the
show.
checks. Yeah, that kind of thing. Yeah.
I wanted to learn more about it than just that.
So you learned the bumps on that respect. Did you have like a mentor that kind of taught you the ways of promoting like some of the other things? Like obviously you learned how the match works. Did you learn how to like produce a match, that sort of thing as well? Or no?
So promoting wise, I'll be honest, man, a lot of that was just trial and error. Working with Sean Hernandez. Sean has obviously been, right there, for many of the years. So, as far as like promoting it and getting the word out and stuff like that, a lot of it was trial and error. A lot of it was stuff that I've learned, and I also have a background in. So, since 2002, I've been working in the media, primarily in communications and marketing and stuff like that. So I was, double dipping, so to speak. I was learning, certain tricks that were working over here, and I'm like, oh, I could take it back over here, and it's something that nobody else was doing. So on that end, it was some experience. I mean, hindsight is 2020. So I mean, I can go back and say, well, I would have done that different,
It's just learning over time. Yeah.
But yeah, and as far as producing matches, I mean, I took that from, my training and the background that I've been in. One of the cool things I always tell people, never overlook the role of a referee. A referee is so crucial in wrestling. It's more than, like, I don't like it when I see promotions just dig somebody out of the crowd and throw a ref shirt over them.
Yeah.
Because I mean, some of the greats that have been around here, your Alex Morosos and some of the other experienced referees, I mean, those guys are super smart because, let's say there's a 6-match card. Well, chances are they reffed all 6 matches. Yeah.
Exhausted by the end of that. Definitely got their money's worth.
But, in there's a lot of things that you could take away from that, I mean, not just watching, but also participating and so it's just a lot of those things. And then having the right people in place, like I said, Sean has been, so key for RCW, and there's been some other wrestlers too that I kind of lean on and like, hey, you guys kind of go over these matches or whatever. So you do have to have the right people in place. One person can't run it by their own, and I've seen that several times. You do have to have a team in place.
So your first show you said was 2002.
Mm-hmm.
You remember the date?
You know what's funny? I don't remember the
Wow.
date. I do remember that it was right around the what's it called? The Cowboy Breakfast, the early morning breakfast.
Oh, yeah.
Because we went out there and promoted it. And I remember it was cold. So, I mean, it had to be like maybe the first part of February, maybe early March tops. But it was at a gymnastics place that's
Wow.
no longer around. It was close to the Far West Rodeo, which is now Cowboys Dance Hall.
Yeah.
But it was my first show. I had Prince, Fontenot, and then Stefan Putski, Lucky Charms or Scotty Charms. So a lot of guys, that weren't being used necessarily by, Shawn Michaels or even kind of the Shawn Michaels spinoffs like, Rudy Boy or something like that. I was kind of using some different guys, but yeah, that was the first show, and it was interesting. And again, hindsight's 2020. I would look back and say I would have done this differently or whatever. But we still had a good crowd, and it was a good show. So, I mean, that's my takeaways. But hard to believe that 2002. So that's like what, my math is bad.
This
right
time
now.
of year, you're coming
It's
up
like
on 17 years.
17 years.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's a long time.
Yeah.
I'm almost ready to graduate high school.
Pretty much. It feels like it, right? Well, the first show's the hardest one. So how was it from there? It was like, okay, I got the first one under my belt. How much time was it before your second one?
It was some time.
Yeah.
I didn't run another show, I don't think, until maybe later that year or the beginning of 2003. And in all truthfulness, I didn't run like a consistent schedule up until 2005. I was kind of just, I would do a show here and do a show here and kind of see what worked and what didn't work and what assets I needed and things of that nature, right?
Yeah.
In 2003 December, we did have the All Japan show. That's probably like the biggest show I had prior to like running full time in 2005.
Yeah.
But that, you look back on it, that had Great Muda and, it had LAX before LAX and, Lance Hoyt before he became a star and, had all these different guys on there, the Spanish announce team. And it was a really cool show, and you look out in the crowd and you'll see like Lance Cade sitting there, and you'll see Sho Funaki sitting there, and stuff like that. And again, I look back on it, it was at the Woodlawn Gym, which is
Wow.
famous for local wrestling.
Yes, it is.
And
Still around.
but again, same thing. I mean, I look back on it, I was like, wow, man, I got to work with the Great Muta, pretty much early on. And again, hindsight's 2020. Some things I would have done differently here and there, but it was definitely memorable.
So I think one of the challenges you have as a promoter of a local promotion is a lot of these guys are aspiring to get beyond this era. They're trying to get the big contracts, the WWEs, the AEWs, and that can present a challenge. Like, you want them to succeed, but now you got to find someone to replace that. Where do you usually find yourself pulling talent from? Like, what is your kind of go-to? Is it really word of mouth, schools?
Well, for me, RCW's changed direction. RCW was, for a long time, up until like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, was a local indie that really tried to push its students and push the locality of the wrestlers here. It's changed course in that now you're seeing bigger events that are a little bit more spread out.
Yeah.
So, that's kind of a multifaceted answer for that question. But, if you're say right now, well, I mean, for example, we do know that, the Monster Abyss has been signed to WWE as an agent.
Yeah.
And he is the reigning RCW champion, which we will make an announcement about that soon.
You can make one now if you want.
They have to come out February 22nd.
I'm sure I'll be there, trust me.
But yeah, so, and so I'll talk about Abyss because I've gotten to know Abyss extremely well. And, everything that you hear about Abyss, like if you watch the Impact Wrestling Hall of Fame and some of the things that's said about him as a person, not necessarily the character of the wrestler, but the person, is all true. I mean, just the absolute nicest guy, the most genuine guy that there is. So much knowledge. When he's putting together his matches, he's kind of lumped in there with Mick Foley, where they're like, oh, they're just hardcore guys, and that's not the truth at all. He just has an unbelievable wrestling acumen, and so him getting signed to WWE, that's awesome. Like, we've been texting, and I'm like, I'm happy for you, and I know in his case it's a little bit different because he was so loyal to Impact Wrestling
for so long through some of the tough times too.
So and in no way is he leaving with bitterness in his in his heart or anything like that. It's business. So I mean, after so many years, he's finally going right. So we're gonna have to replace that, but a lot of it is just networking. I mean, RCW has been around for 17 years. We have a great reputation, not just amongst, the fans and within San Antonio, but also a great reputation within the wrestling industry. So, I mean, there's times that I don't need to call, someone else calls us, or, and it's really, it's really fascinating. It's really fascinating getting calls from those guys or getting inquiries from those guys, because it's like, wow, like, you're so-and-so, right?
Yeah.
And that's really cool. So it's getting out there just from all the networking. I mean, RCW is no longer that San Antonio indie that, goes crazy or whatever. It's now gotten to be where guys that are established and professional are like, well, RCW treats me very well, right?
Yeah.
You've never heard, any bad instances between RCW and the established legends or the established names. They know that they come down here and they're taken care of. So that goes a long way. They all talk.
Yeah. Everyone seems to talk in this business, right?
They all talk. So they all know, if these promotions are taking care of the guys, or, these promotions, are not, or what have you. And so, a big part of that is that kind of networking, and that kind of ability. But yeah, if you asked me back in 2009, I would say, pulling from the school.
From the school.
But we don't have a school anymore. We changed direction, and so it's a different answer now.
Nowadays, though, if you were in that position, you probably would pull from like Hybrid and some of the other schools, or they might talk to you about that.
Right.
Sort of thing.
Whatever we have, working with, and whatever we have good relations with and stuff like that. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, we got a few questions that were submitted.
Oh,
some
God.
from fellow WrestleCasters, some online. I'll start with the one that you know of. 'Cause
Okay.
You retweeted this one. In any of the angles you've gotten physically involved in, was there a move or spot you were hesitant to take or be involved in?
So the most famous one, and I say most famous, you know, the most notorious one, I guess, would be the incident that I had with Jake the Snake Roberts. So,
Yeah.
you know, we had Jake the Snake Roberts come in, as you know, boom boom. Brandon Oliver is a real jerk, personally and professionally, and you know, so I was, you know, running my mouth or whatever, and the two girls that were in the ring were Katie Forbes and Rebel. You know, they knocked me out, they knocked me down or whatever, and so Jake the Snake comes out, right, with the snake with Damien.
Yeah.
And you know, he puts a snake on me, which, you know, by the way, I hate snakes. Like,
Yeah.
like earlier.
So
in
does Jake, by the way. He said that.
Yes.
He hates snakes. Yeah.
But like earlier in the day, you know, we did a lot of media, you know, with Jake, and you know, he was bringing the snake around, and it'd be like, oh man, you know, you want to, you know, touch the snake? I'm like, no, you know. But in the show, it's like, hell yeah, right? Throw it on me, right? Dean Ambrose with a smile, you know, and. So he put the snake on me, but he let the snake go inside my pants, and the snake went all the way down
Classic Jake.
to my boot, and
Yeah.
you know, would like worm its, you know, little way down to my boot, and you know, the other half is sticking out of me, and you know, looking back on it now, and people tell me like, man, you were crazy for doing that, you know, and I was just like, God, I, you know, hope the snake doesn't, you know, I mean, I could feel it like biting on the pant leg,
Yeah.
and because, you know, Jake is there tugging on it, and you know, I was like, God, you know, please let me, you know,
Please don't-
escape with this.
yeah.
I mean, it turned out to be a great memory, I think, you know, for everybody that was there and everybody that saw. I mean, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, at the time, like, it's funny if you were to sit there and say, hey, let's do it, you know, let's do the same thing right now. I'd be like, hell no, right?
Yeah. No one's paying me to do this kind of
Right.
thing. Yeah.
But at the time, I was like, hell yeah, man. You know, so it's funny what you'll do in the moments of the show. But that's probably the one that, you know, I'll look back on and say, you know, what was I thinking doing that? Everything else, I mean, you know, I've done all the, you know, staples, and, you know, I've gone through table and hit by a chair and blah, blah, blah. Like, I've done all that stuff. I've been in matches, you know, wrestled hard body and blah, blah, blah. And that one, the snake was definitely interesting. It
Are
was,
you kind of the same mentality that I'll never ask a wrestler to do something I wouldn't do myself?
yeah, you know,
Yeah.
you hear that like about Vince McMahon
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and so one of the RCW staples that we have, and I know you know about this, is the fan lumberjack strap match.
Yes.
And so the fan lumberjack strap match, for those who don't know, we auction off, or we raffle off the chance for usually up 8 fans to surround the ring, and
With
we give
straps.
them straps.
I've been in a few of them, people. I'm sure there's video out there somewhere.
and you know, when they come out of the ring, you know, Royal Rumble style, both feet on the floor, and they're on the floor. You know, the lumberjacks can hit with the straps. So, you know, I've been in probably about 3 or 4 of those at least, and so, you know, because I know it is brutal and stuff like that, I wouldn't want to make somebody do something that I wouldn't be willing to do, and you know. I don't know if I could say ass. Can I say ass on this?
Sure, why
okay.
not? Yeah.
So, you know, we call it showing ass, right? And so, you know, Boom Boom Brandon Oliver honestly gets small little victories, but never wins the war, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't mind when it's me showing ass. That's why I did Jake the Snake Roberts, the snake. That's why when Rikishi came down, I got the stink face. You know, other things like that, like, you know, I want to make sure that, you know, the other guys, you know, see that I'm willing to do that too. You know, I'm not going to make them do something that I'm not willing to do and just put myself over as the greatest, you know, person that ever lived. You know, it's just not believable. And, you know, at the end of the day, I think it makes for a better leader if you're willing to go in and do the same things.
For the record, my favorite fan lumberjack strap match was the one where you had just women surrounding the ring with the whole Spectre thing. And I remember Sean, big guy Sean's a huge fan, hated Spectre so much he dressed as a woman just to be a part of that, and you guys let him into that as well. So.
Well, I think you missed this. Yeah, that was
Yeah.
a good one. You missed another one. It was me versus Spectre, and it was a blindfold fan lumberjack strap match. So, you know, it was
I
right
can
after, because I've worked with Jake a couple times now already, but one of the times I worked with Jake, that's where I got the idea from, was the Jake the Snake, Rick the Model Martel,
Yeah.
WrestleMania 7. I was like, let's do a blindfold match where Spectre and I are blindfolded and you'll fall out of the ring and get hit by
Get
a
hit.
strap. So that's one of the memorable ones too. But yeah, that guy Sean, Uncle Sean, a lot
Uncle
of people
Sean,
call
a lot
him.
of people call him. Yes.
Yeah, I mean he would whip the hell out of guys.
He
You know,
would.
even if you had to dress like a woman to do so.
Yep. All right. Another question we had. This was from Tommy, as you might imagine.
Oh God.
Yes. In your opinion, who was the best RCW champion?
Boy, that's a good question.
Yeah.
And it's also hard because we changed course. So, for the RCW champions over the past, couple of years have been guys that, I put the post up recently, like showing, fans that, hey, Jeff Jarrett, Rockstar Spud, EC3 were in RCW recently, and
Yeah.
now they're on Raw. And out of those guys, Jeff Jarrett and Rockstar Spud, have been champions, and Abyss has been a champion. I think all three of them, carried the belt extremely well. If you want to go locally, let's say, 2012 or so, earlier, Ikaika would be up there. I think Masada would be up there. So much good talent has come through RCW over the years. When you look back and say, no matter what has happened in their careers or, how they left RCW or whatever the case may be, so much talent has gone through, and it's amazing to see them. I mean, another guy that's in NXT right now, two of them actually, that are RCW champions. You had Ray Rowe, and then you have Keith Lee.
Yes.
And, both of those guys are tremendous talents. Ray Rowe is the best marketing wrestler I've ever met. He totally understood, merch and how to sell himself, and not just in addition to being a good talent.
Right.
I was actually, just an aside, I was talking to somebody about talent, like, just talent doesn't make you alone. There's all these other intangibles.
You got to do a whole lot more. Yeah.
Right. And, Ray Rowe understood that. So it's no surprise that, he's doing well in NXT. And of course, Super Max Hernandez got to be up there as well.
Oh, yeah. Part two of that question: who is the best RCW tag team champions? Because one thing I think RCW has been notorious for is a tag team division for so many years.
So in my heart, man, it'll always be the Texas Streets.
Yeah.
Don Juan and Chris Marvel were fantastic, and I can't say enough good things about their work ethic and all the things that they can do.
Yeah.
That's probably up there. But yeah, we had like the Nerdy Boys, and we had all these great tag teams throughout the years. There's some new ones that are also doing well. There's the Pillars of Destiny. There are two Viking guys.
Vikings is in right now. It's crazy.
They're doing well, and so but yeah, I totally agree with you. There's been a great amount of RCW tag teams.
All right. My wife had a question. Who would you say was, at least through your promotion, has been the most underrated wrestler, male or female, to come through River City Wrestling?
Man.
They're giving the tough questions here, so
They are. I don't know if I can narrow it down to one, so I'll talk about a couple of them. The first one, people will hate on him, but is Joey Spectre.
I had a feeling you were going to say Joey Spectre. Yeah.
If you would put Spectre's mind and charisma into a 6'4", 240-pound guy, he would have done amazing things.
Yeah.
Because that's how Spectre is. His mind for the business, his charisma, his mic skills, and even his ring skills. He's not going to go out there, and he can. It's funny because the Spectre of like 2005, 2006, 2004, he would go out there and do all the flippity doos and stuff.
Yeah.
But then he found a style that works and really, the crowd hates the hell out of him.
Yeah.
And it's
He's
like
never had a problem drawing heat. I'll agree with that. Yep.
And so I would put him up there. Don Juan, I always thought was just a phenomenal talent. And whatever was thrown Don Juan's way, he made work. So definitely those guys are underrated. I think Schizo, David Leach, is also very underrated. He's held the RCW championship the longest out of everybody. He's played different characters.
He's been in for so long. I'd say he really has.
And
Yeah.
the thing about Schizo is that he's just so solid,
Yeah.
And now I think he's doing a character and a gimmick that's really speaking to him, because the Baker thing is a real thing.
I'm not surprised by that somehow.
Yeah, he would show up with baked goods and cookies and cupcakes or whatever for the guys in the back. So when it came time to update him and create a new gimmick, we're like, let's he wanted to do the Baker. He had mentioned it before. I was like, let's run with the Baker.
Yeah.
And so I think he's enjoying it. He's getting to be more of himself than being somebody else.
They say the best characters are yourself turned up to like 11, basically. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what it is.
Yeah. So I mean, those are the underrated guys, and there's a lot of guys right now that I think that you'll see on February 22nd and stuff that are really doing well. Another guy that started with us, Rob Love, who was a student. We used to call him Sticks because he was so skinny.
Yeah.
But if you look at Rob Love has worked extremely hard, to improve himself physically and improve himself in the ring. And, so, I mean, Texas has a lot of guys, that just, they really want to put their all into it. And you're starting to see it, like, there's more opportunities, AEW and so on and so forth, NXT. So, they're getting these opportunities now. I noticed the other day ACH was at the Performance Center.
He just signed, officially.
So,
yeah.
That's great. That's great that Texas guys are getting out there.
Definitely. Puts Texas on the map, too. From another WrestleCaster question, who has been your favorite, I say, quote, famous wrestler that you brought in for RCW?
Oh, man. I can't say. I
figure you can't
one.
say. You don't want to single one out, but yeah.
I would say the famous wrestlers that really kind of started it off for me would be Bushwhacker Luke, who still to this day, will call me and just shoot
awesome.
the breeze. Jake, DDP, Ricky Steamboat was awesome. I mean, these are guys that I still talk. Jeff Jarrett, obviously. Jim Ross is another one. So Jim Ross and I, we were actually working together pretty often. I'm doing his creative, like his graphics.
Oh, okay.
So like when you see, the Jim Ross podcast and like his Ringside with Jim Ross, shows and stuff like that.
Right, his live shows.
I'm doing those graphics.
Oh, nice.
So, and Jim Ross has opened some doors for me as well. Jeff, of course. So yeah, definitely over the last few years, there's definitely been several that just, leap off the page and are really cool to work with.
All right. What is the origin of the nickname Boom Boom?
So that actually came from Don Juan.
Oh, okay.
Don Juan's a very jovial guy and a very, he's a jokester and a prankster. And I think it started off with the boom boom room and the stripping type thing, and it kind of went with the hard bodies that we were doing at the time. When the hard bodies, for those who don't know, are like out of shape guys that think they're strippers.
Think they're God's gift to women. Yeah, basically.
Wearing the short shorts and the socks pulled up and the tube tops and stuff. So I think I really adopted the boom boom, right, as part of the hard bodies, and it just took off from there. And then as part of the enjoyment too is creating something for me. Yeah. So I've been able to do from hard body to rich oiled Texan to now this kind of I'm wearing yellow and red and these crazy outfits that are inspired by different wrestlers. Hulk obviously with yellow and red, but Bobby the Brain and Jimmy Hart with the jackets.
Oh yeah.
Jimmy Hart, by the way, is another fantastic legend that we worked with. But, like I'm getting into having this kind of look and this kind of uniformity with the stuff I'm wearing. Just because when we grew up, Bobby the Brain, to me, Bobby the Brain was probably, you got Hulk, you got Macho Man, and if you open it up to personality, I'd put Bobby the Brain at number 3.
He was definitely ahead of his time.
Yeah, and just, I love the way he worked the crowd and just how much effort he gave into his appearance. Like Macho Man says, if you want to be a main eventer, you got to dress like a main eventer. Yeah. So, very big believer in that.
All right, and Tommy has one more question. He wants to know, who is your favorite fan?
Not Tommy.
The answer I thought you were going to give.
No, look, the fans have been, awesome. And, throughout the years, fans, come and go for a variety of reasons.
We'll be getting back soon. We're just trying to get the little kid potty trained, little guy potty trained. So,
none of this would be possible without the fans. And I'm not just saying that as, promoter, but legitimately going back, to when I was a fan and, when I was a kid growing up and, playing with the wrestlers and, e-fetting and all that stuff, I remember when ECW was first, and I was living in California at the time, when ECW was first becoming popular.
Yeah.
Well before TNN and well before the pay-per-view and all that. I'm talking when you had to order the tapes through RF Video, right?
Yeah, the old school tape trading kind of thing. Yes.
And I remember, not even being a part of ECW or in any capacity, but just as a fan, but being excited to see other people wear ECW stuff. Or, I have this tape or whatever. It was like, wow, it's really, really cool to see as a fan. So, launching your own promotion and putting forth as much sacrifice and work as it is for someone to respond and come to your show and pay, hard-earned money and, sometimes even represent with the shirt or whatever. It's awesome. It's an awesome feeling. That's, there's nothing like it. I mean, talking about professionally, and even personally, but I do want to give my family love. That's number one.
always.
Yes.
Their biggest support system.
Right. But definitely up there is that fan support. So no, I can't just narrow it down, Tommy, to just one.
Sorry, Tommy. I know you're looking for that answer, but all right. Well, we do have some final questions here. What has been the favorite match you've ever had on one of your shows?
So probably can't narrow it down to just one. But going over the whole history, I mean, there was an electrified cage match that we did one time.
Which you did right, because what TNA did, it was horrible.
We did that. I believe the first time the Hard Bodies won the tag titles, held up Madison. That was awesome. Going to contemporary, we're featuring some more lucha guys, Baby Black, Dr. Maldad, the Neon Boys. They've been putting on some awesome matches lately that have been stealing the show. So, I mean, there was a series between Alyssa Flash and Joey Spector.
Oh, yeah.
That
those were classics.
Before intergender wrestling was a thing, that were classics. And there's just been so many matches and so many things that guys have done that I'm extremely proud of, and just knocked it out of the park so many times.
And kind of extending on that, what was the favorite show that you've ever promoted? Which one sticks out as like your favorite one?
Man.
Yeah. Hard to pick one, right?
I don't know if I think, it's going to be kind of a cliched answer, but I think it's the show that just happened, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's always going to be the last show that just happened. So you asked me that, February 23rd, I'd be like, February 22nd was awesome. Just because every one of them has been different and every one of them has had some different things occur, and between fans and performer, between the performers themselves, between myself and the performers or the fans, there's always something different and something cool that just makes it special.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'm not just talking as a promoter, sell tickets, wink, wink, but it does seem like the last show is always my favorite one.
All right. You've been through so many venues. Which one has been your favorite for wrestling? What would you say is your favorite one?
Oh, man. So I always long for the West Side, not the West Side, the YWCA that we ran over on Casterville Road.
Yeah.
Really like that one. Of course, it does get better that the Hope of Glory days.
Oh, yeah.
Church Triumphant days.
How intimate that little place was. Yeah.
Sideliners was very good to us for a number of years. And then the venues that we have now, Retama Park, Turner Club, Freetail Brewery have been awesome as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, of course, you think about the Hope of Glory and think about talking about talent that has moved up and on and into bigger, things. Think about those shows that you saw in front of 70, 80 people in that little
Yeah.
tiny church.
And the locker room was outside. Everybody else is inside, right? Yeah.
But if you think about the talent that went through, we mentioned some of the names here. Just those were special times. You look back on it
Yep.
now, and even people that were in the crowd, are now in the business and stuff like that. So, I was joking with you on Facebook, like how many, marriages and relationships RCW is responsible
Yeah,
for.
yeah, and I guess we'll give you credit for it. We met through wrestling, and we'll credit her cousin, who happened to be Don Juan, for kind of helping usher that in. I guess you could say, try to push us together, and then it just worked out. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's
yeah.
amazing how many. I mean, I tried to count it up one time. It was over 10.
Wow.
People that have either gone into a relationship or got married because of RCW, or they met, whether they were fans or performers or whatever.
Yeah.
But I counted up one time. Was like, I think there were over 10. So some don't want to acknowledge it, and that's fine. But but I
me.
go back and look, and I'm like, oh, they met at RCW, and that's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool to see. Again, a lot has been said and done about RCW over the years, but one of the things that we've done is we've ingrained ourselves in the history of local wrestling here.
Yeah.
17 years, most companies don't make it past 5. If you think about how long WCW lasted, I'm not talking about NWA, I'm talking about Ted Turner's WCW. It didn't last that long.
No, when you look back in hindsight, it wasn't even maybe 10 years, maybe a full 10 years. I'm
Right.
trying to think. Yeah.
ECW was not, so, and I'm not sitting there saying we're better than them. No, not at all. It's just, the longevity and ingraining yourself. And, part of it too is I've never had any sort of inhibition, I've never had a inclining to go out there and I want to promote in Dallas.
Yeah.
Or I want to promote in Houston. I truly believe that we were San Antonio, Kirby or whatever, but
Yeah.
San
area.
Antonio. This is our roots, and I do believe in the territories. I know it's been a long time, but I do believe that if you reside somewhere and you spend all your time somewhere, well, then you're going to know a lot about it.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't want to go up to Austin and take over. I wouldn't want to go to Dallas and take over. I would rather work together. Let's bring down a talent and share that, or let's I got some guys that are hungry. Send them your way. You send them my way.
Yeah.
That type of thing. It just works so much better like that.
Well, you say you've been in it for, it's coming up on 17 years now.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking briefly about how AEW is getting going, All Elite Wrestling, and there's so much behind it. If you had any, I guess, one piece of advice for Cody, the Young Bucks, for the Khan family who are just getting started in promoting wrestling, what would it be for them?
So Cody, I actually had him on the show.
Yeah, I know
he
you've had him
was-
on the show, so I don't know if he asked for you any advice for promoting.
Well,
but yeah.
no, you
Yeah.
didn't. I wish he did.
Yeah.
But this is well before that. It was like right after his WWE. We were the first promotion in Texas to book him,
After he
before
released.
Ring of Honor or anybody else.
Right.
To run a show with Cody, and Cody was very complimentary because that night we ran against Ring of Honor, and to be fair, we weren't against their A team.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, we outdrew them. Right?
Wow.
And even Cody, acknowledged that and said, "Hey, you guys, knocked it out of the park," and blah blah blah, because, that's saying something, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at, who that day during San Antonio, where people were in the media and making appearances and stuff, RCW was all over the place, and so that wasn't by accident. Now, not something
Yeah.
to sit there and say, "Man, I could beat Ring of Honor." No, Ring of Honor could bring down their A show and blow me away, right?
Yeah.
But I have much respect for him. I mean, just the way the schedule worked out, and it worked out cool. But anyway, going back to Cody and AEW, competition is always good. I know I do better with competition. It's said that Vince McMahon does better with competition.
I think anybody does, right?
It tends to bring out this side of you, especially in promoters. And yes, there is promoter ego. That is a thing. It definitely does, and inspire you. Both positive and negative, to be fair, to go out there and do it. I would just really evaluate the mistakes of the promotions have made. I know the guy, Mr. Khan has a lot of money, right?
Yep.
So did Ted Turner, and sometimes money doesn't always, equals success. So it definitely helps with assets, right? But it doesn't guarantee it. So, really evaluate. Look at Impact Wrestling, look at Ring of Honor, look at some of the other promotions that have really pushed, hard and to be a true alternative to WWE. Where do they come up short? Everyone comes up short. RCW comes up short in areas.
Yeah.
So everyone makes mistakes and there's some shortcomings here or there. So, and they have creative minds, Cody and Young Bucks and Kenny Omega. So they'll be able to sit there and say, okay, this is where this is where they messed up. Like I said, hindsight's 20/20. So go back and use that, and say like, and the other thing too is, I faced a lot of competition here. And we were talking about this before we started, find something that makes you, and don't just try to, copy what somebody else is doing or try to take away what somebody else is doing. I liked it when Impact Wrestling had the 6-sided ring and the X division, the women's division was really, really good. And
it was unique.
It made it different.
Yeah.
Right. When they started with the 4-sided ring and then, bringing in all the ex-WWE guys, then it started saying, right. Like it didn't make it so unique and made it seem like, well, why are they over there, right? So, I think those guys have a good handle of it because contemporary-wise, social media-wise, I mean, those guys poop gold right now, right? Young Bucks put out a tweet, it's gotten like a gajillion retweets and likes. So, they understand that, use that. Like I said in RCW, I try to look at what the other guys are doing and try to do differently. I've gotten a lot of flack for having my own roster and stuff like that, but the truth of it is I want to do things a certain way because I don't want us to look the same. I don't want us to look like the Crosstown guy. Well, I saw that guy wrestle on Friday. I don't really need to go out tonight. Yeah. Because the hardest thing about, I get this question a lot, the hardest thing about being an indie promoter is getting people to interested enough into their show to gather up their whole family in a car, drive out to some venue that's not the AT&T Center, right? Yeah. And pay whatever the ticket price is, $10, $20, whatever the case may be, and and get them to do that. Versus, well, I can watch Raw, I can watch SmackDown. The network is now $9.99 a month. Yeah. So I get all the pay-per-views and yada yada. I don't even need to leave my house, right? So that's a big challenge. That's when everybody says that. And I look at it and I'm like, all right, indies, we're all in the same boat on that. But, find what makes you, you. But, I know RCW has a reputation, good and bad. But that's what makes us us. Yeah. Right? So, that's what I believe in. That would be my advice for AEW. Not that they would take it, but or ask for it, but that would be my advice.
Within RCW, is there a booking decision you've ever made that you wish you could have done differently? Either like on a storyline or something like that. Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say one in particular or anything like that because I don't want to call out people or anything like that. But, yeah, there's times when I'm like, that didn't work or, we should use this tactic or, like I said, hindsight's 20/20. So you go back and look and say, we should have done this differently or that differently. Absolutely. It happens all the time. Not just in wrestling, that's in life, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, I mean, absolutely, there's been times. I don't want to single one out because then people get involved and all that.
Yeah, you start getting, well, he said this. Or this. Yeah. You've been promoting for so long. How much longer do you see yourself doing this?
I don't see myself stopping. Not for a very, very long time. I mean, luckily, my family is come along for the ride, and they help in so many areas. I talked about a team earlier. It's not just performers, it's not just talent. I get so many people that I want to be a promoter. Well, why? Well, I want to. I know I could do better than WWE. I could. It's more than just saying wrestler A versus wrestler B or wrestler C attacks D, which leads to the. Yeah. I always liken that to teaching. I taught school for a little bit. And, coming up with the lesson plans, that's fun. Oh, man, these kids this is going to be like Dangerous Minds over here. I'm going to change people, Renaissance man, right? And, you get into lesson plans. This stuff is going to melt their mind, right? That's the fun part, Right?
Yeah.
It's all the other stuff. So when I talk about a team, it's not just the performers. I mean, obviously, without their sacrifice, the show wouldn't be possible. But I'm talking about all the, my family that helps out, the door and the concessions and merch and, the guys that do the ring and the setup and, all the, the graphics and the video and stuff like that. All those guys get no love, right? Nobody's ever like, I'm a big fan of the camera guy, you know? They don't get any love, but I mean, God, if it wasn't for some of these individuals, it would not be possible.
Yep.
It's a lot of different moving parts. So yeah, I don't see myself stopping. And the other positive thing is that my career, I work for a university, I work in the media. They've been very accommodating in it and, very supportive. A lot of them will go to the shows or ask me how it was or whatever. So, having all those things in the right places just have added up, and there's no reason to stop.
Yeah. What do you want your legacy in wrestling to be?
Man, I honestly that, I would love to inspire the next Brandon Oliver, right? The next one.
The next promoter.
Because, it really meant a lot to me as a kid. It really, really did. I go back to, being an only child and a single mom and, I didn't, have a father figure and stuff. And it really meant a lot to me growing up. The wrestlers were bigger than life, right? Yeah. And, that got me through tough times, right? Everyone has like for example, with music, you'll hear them say, oh, this song got me through a breakup or this song got me through this tough time or whatever. Wrestling was that for me. So, I want that legacy to be, and I think we've done it. I think we've, I've had so many people say, I've never knew there was local wrestling until I came here. Yeah. Or RCW was the first promotion I saw, and then I saw, some other ones or whatever. I can't tell you how many times I've heard that,
I was one of them, to be honest with you. Royal Rumble 07, we went to Ingram for their thing, and then we caught a flyer, because I think you flyered everywhere back then, and said, well, yeah, let's go check it out. They have LAX there, and
right.
The first time with that live feel, and the first chop from Gemini, his chops were just legendary. It was just like, man, this is awesome, and we were hooked from there. So.
Yeah, that's what I love to hear. I love to hear that, even if things happen and the fan can't go or whatever, that's fine. Yeah. I mean, I love hearing that RCW was the first. I didn't know wrestling was around, and I found RCW. Or RCW was the first promotion I went to. I love hearing that, because that means we're getting out there and doing our job right. Yeah. Now from there we got to keep them going, but but I love hearing that. That's what I want to be our legacy. I want us to be San Antonio's brand of professional wrestling. It's not a tagline. That's genuine. Like, I want people to say that, they talk about San Antonio wrestling. What they always talk about, Southwest Championship Wrestling. Yeah. Right. I'm not going to sit there and say we're in the same breath as them, but I do want people of this generation to say, San Antonio wrestling, yeah, RCW was a part of that.
Yeah.
And so that's what I want.
I think you're well on your way there. So.
Yeah.
All right, so on the internet, River City Wrestling is at rcw-wrestling.com. Mm-hmm. On Twitter and Instagram at RCW Forever. Facebook is RCW-River City Wrestling.
No, I made it all streamlined. RCW Forever on all
RCW of our Forever. So it's everything, even on Pro Wrestling Tees, which I just discovered you guys set that up. So yeah, RCW Forever. I'll have the graphic right. Don't worry about that. So. Now, your show coming up, anything you want to say about that? It's kind of a big one.
So February 22nd, we're back at the Turner Club. The women are taking center stage. As you know, women's wrestling is hot right now. I mean, it's just on fire. And, RCW has done, not just women's matches, but we've had entire shows dedicated to the women's wrestlers and stuff like that. So we do have Gail Kim coming in, the legendary Gail Kim.
Yes, I've said many times she's my all-time favorite, so I'm super excited. Yeah.
Katie Forbes, who, in some ways is the queen of RCW. She's been really, as far as the modern women's division, has been kind of up there at the forefront, as well as the current champion Rebel. Those two have kind of been the flag bearers. Barbie Hayden, of course, coming in. She's also up there. Scarlett Bordeaux, who's is going to be, she's going to take off.
Oh, yeah. I think she already is, too.
For the fans that just see the smoke show videos on Impact and haven't actually seen her wrestle, she's good. She's
Yeah.
very good. So, it could definitely back up the videos. And, of course, we have Christy Janes coming in for the first time to RCW, but not to be outdone. The men will be there, too. We got, of course, Supermax Hernandez. We got, the Luchas coming in. We got some crazy characters. The Baker's going to be there. We have this new guy named Luigi Primo. He's a pizza guy.
Of course, with a name like that.
He comes out there spinning the pizza, and he has the mustache. And what's great about him is his Facebook is phenomenal because he, this is kind of more of a shoot interview, but he stays in character on Facebook.
That's the way to do
and
it.
It's fantastic.
That's the way to do it, man.
So we got some great talent coming in, and it's going to be an awesome show. And then we're looking at the next one in April. I don't want to say the date yet, because I was just telling somebody a lot of it depends on talent being available,
Yes.
the talent that we want to bring in, what we're running against. We got to look at April, Fiesta and all that. So, you kind of have to, evaluate that. And believe it or not, I try not to run against things.
Well, yeah, that's smart booking, I would think, right?
Even Spurs and stuff like that, that's one of the other things I would, tell promoters I want to get in the game is, don't run head to head. I hate that.
Yeah. So front row is sold out. Second row seats are available for $30. And
That's correct.
That's correct. And general admissions $20, and kids 3 and under
Are free.
Free.
Yep.
Awesome.
For general admission.
For general admission, yeah.
Yep.
And this is at the Turner Club next weekend. Well, this will be out on Saturday, but this will be the following weekend. So
This Friday.
This Friday when it comes out. Yes.
So it'll be a great show. And for those that have never been, that's what I want to hear. RCW brought me out. So,
Yep.
if you haven't been, come check it out.
Yeah, if you're in the San Antonio area, you're a fan of wrestling, definitely check it out. We'll be out there. I'm trying to get some of the other Geekcasters to go as well. I'm sure us WrestleCasters will be out there because I want to be at Gail Kim again. She's my all-time favorite. So, Brandon, thank you so much.
Right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
We do have a sign-off here.
Okay.
I'll say pro wrestling is real, and then we'll go say people are fake. That's kind of our sign-off with the WrestleCast. So
Okay.
I think you've been in it long enough, maybe you might agree with that. So
Yeah. Let's do it.
all right. So until next time, heels and baby faces, remember that pro wrestling is real.
People are fake.